Okie dokie then. This is the D&D Starter Set Rulebook. Chapter 1, How to Play, and that includes Getting Started and 6 abilities. Chapter 2, Combat, which includes Order of Combat, Movement and Position, Attacking in Combat, Making an Attack, Cover, Dealing Damage and Healing. Chapter 3 is Adventuring, which includes travel, resting, rewards, and equipment. Chapter 4 is Spellcasting. What is a spell, casting a spell, spell lists, and spells. And then it ends up with the appendix there at the end. Alright. Chapter 1, How to Play. The Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game is about storytelling in worlds of swords and sorcery. Like games of make-believe, D&D is driven by imagination. It's about picturing a crumbling castle in a darkening forest and imagining how a fantasy adventurer might react to the challenges that scene presents. In this fantasy world, the possibilities are limitless. Dungeon Master. The castle stands among the trees, the crumbling ruins of 7 round towers jutting up from it like broken teeth. An archway littered with twisted shards of rusted metal gapes open at the top of a short flight of steps. 2 of the towers, speckled with dark arrow slits, loom beside the entryway, and a dark hall yawns beyond. Philip, the cleric. Let's send one of the rogues up ahead to look and make sure it's safe. Amy, rogue. Okay, I'll move to the side and sneak along the wall of the tower until I can peer through the entrance. Unlike a game of make-believe, D&D gives structure to the stories, a way of determining the consequences of adventurers' actions. Players roll dice to determine whether their attacks hit or miss, and whether their characters can scale a cliff, roll away from a strike of a magical lightning bolt, or pull off some other dangerous task. Anything is possible, but the dice make some things more probable than others. DM. Alright, Amy, let's see how sneaky you are. Make a dexterity check. Amy, with my stealth skill, right? You bet. Amy rolls a d20. I'm pretty sneaky. That's a 17. Okay, there's no sign that anyone notices you, and you're looking inside. When you play D&D, you take on the role of an adventurer, a skilled fighter, a devout cleric, a deadly rogue, or a spellcasting wizard. The character sheets included with this set describe 5 heroes to get you started. With some friends and a little imagination, you strike out on grand quests and daring adventures, testing yourself against an array of challenges and bloodthirsty monsters. One player takes the role of Dungeon Master, the game's lead storyteller and referee. The DM is in charge of the adventure, which appears in the adventure book, while the characters navigate the adventure's hazards and decide where to explore. The DM might describe the entrance to Krogmaw Castle, and the players decide what their adventurers do, while they boldly stride up to the fallen gate or try to sneak in case anyone's watching through the arrow slits. Perhaps they'll circle around looking for another entrance or cast a spell to cloak themselves in invisibility. The DM determines the results of the adventurer's actions and narrates what the characters experience. Because the DM can improvise and react to anything the players attempt, D&D is infinitely flexible, and each adventure can be exciting and unexpected. There's no winning and losing in D&D, at least not the way those terms are usually understood. Together, the DM and the players create a story of bold adventurers who confront deadly perils. Sometimes an adventurer might come to a grisly end, torn apart by ferocious monsters or done in by a nefarious villain. Even so, the other adventurers can search for a powerful magic to revive their fallen comrade, or the player might choose to play a new character. The group might fail to complete an adventure successfully, But if the players had a good time and created a memorable story, they all win. Getting started. If this is your first time playing Dungeons & Dragons, start by reading the rest of this chapter. It tells you the most important rules you need to play the game. Someone needs to be the Dungeon Master for your first play experience. Since you're reading this, you're a good candidate to be the DM. If one of your friends knows how to play D&D already, you might want to ask that person to be the DM and help you learn the game. Once you've read this chapter, take a look at a few first pages of the adventure book, and that will help you understand the role of DM and the basics of a D&D adventure. From there, look over the rest of this book. You don't need to memorize everything before your first game, but it helps if you know where to find the rules while you play. Then, get familiar with the adventure, and you'll be ready to gather your friends to play. Each player chooses one character from the 5 options included. It's up to the players to turn these bare-bones characters into people by giving them names, describing their appearance, and bringing them to life while playing through the adventure. If you have more than 5 players, it's okay for 2 players to use the same character, as long as they make the details of the characters distinct. One cleric might be a jolly woman named Zephyrus, while the other a severe man named Albric. Game dice. The game uses the polyhedron dice that come with this set. In these rules, the different dice are referred to by the letter D, followed by the number of sides. D4, D6, D8, D10. The 0 on the die represents a 10. D12 and D20. For instance, a D6 is a 6-sided die. Percentile dice, or D10, or D100, work a little differently. You generate a number between 1 and 100 by rolling 10-sided dice twice. The first roll gives you the 10 digit, and the second gives you the 1 digit. If you roll a 7 and a 1, for example, the number rolled is 71. 2 zeros represent 100. When you need to roll a dice, the rules tell you how many dice to roll for a certain type, as well as what modifiers need to apply. For example, 3d8 plus 5 means you roll 3 8-sided dice, add them together, and add 5 to the total.